up people and have been passed around by the Soviets and then passed around by the EU and all the oligarchs, and they've been occupied for 80 years. And so you can't blame them being such a mess. I mean, that country is a mess because of the corruption. And all they know is, are we going to side with NATO because it gives us more stuff up front but gets us into debt so they control us, or do we side with Russia? And, you know, it really comes down to that. The Ukrainians should just try to be neutral, but powerful forces aren't going to let them be neutral. They could be the new Switzerland. They could be the new Ireland. They could be the next big boom state with some good policies like zero tax and stuff like that, but they're not. Trump went to Kim Jong-un and he said, you could build condos and high-rises and casinos and theme parks all down your coast. You have hundreds of billions of dollars of real estate. Look at Japan, where a 2-bedroom apartment costs $5 million. He goes, you could have the Japanese moving here, everybody. Just free your people, industrialize your country, build some economic zones. Within 10 years, we can have you performing like South Korea. And he said, I want to do it. And Xi Jinping said, no. We'd rather keep you with only a few cities with electricity, with 1 million people starving to death a year, because China doesn't want a prosperous North Korea. And so it'll keep a little demonic joke in there with that horrible, evil military over all those people. The answer is Disneyland. And I don't mean the corrupt leftist Disneyland, but you know what I mean. That's what Ukraine wants to be as a tourist destination. Ukraine wants to be an industry leader. They want to be a farming leader like they already are. People want land. They want beautiful places to live. It's a gorgeous country. Has gorgeous women. People don't want, the average person doesn't want to fight the Russians or the Ukrainians or anybody else. The average American wants to live in peace. And so does the average person in Ukraine or Russia. But this whole thing has been manipulated into this position. And you know, one of the biggest lies about me is that I say things to make money. Like they had big NPR pieces with this lying lady that wrote this fake book about me with a bunch of disinfo. We've already had it looked over by lawyers. And it says, Jones made $150 million in the last 5-6 years or whatever it is. It's not true. On Sandy Hook. Hardly ever even talked about it. Don't make money off a story. But they just say, he lies for money. Really, I tell the truth, and then the people tune in, and that generates the money to have an independent operation. The truth is what sells, not lies. So why would I lie for money? That's you guys. That's what you do. You write a book about Sandy Hook and then talk about how I make money off Sandy Hook while you live off of it. And the reason I raise that is it's the same thing. When 9/11 happened, it was clearly an inside job. I'm not saying radical Muslims don't exist. I'm not saying that, no, but there was a globalist operation that bare minimum stood down. Then planning passports and cover-ups and blowing up Building 7. You know the story. You know the history. I was on over 140 radio stations, or 139, when that happened. And within 3 weeks of me saying it's an inside job, we were down to 30-something stations. And Ted Anderson stood behind me, and his program director quit over it and just said, what have you done? We gave you a job. Within 4 years, you had 130-something stations. They were making millions of dollars. And we had big stations, 100,000 watt FMs, 50,000 watt AMs. I mean, it was a big hit. And Ted said, if you want to do this, you think you're right, because they never told me what to say before, go ahead, Alex. And I lost 100 affiliates. Now, is that somebody that lies about things for money? No, I'm Tomorrow's News Today. I want to get it right. But obviously, you don't need to believe me. You see that. You know that. But that's my point on this Russia thing. We know Biden's a liar. We know Soros is evil. We know this is all bad. We know Russia's been ganged up on. We know the leftists put the Bolsheviks in for 80 years and fed off the Russians. We know they hate the Russians now because they're getting free from the New World Order. Russia is an autocratic system. And so people think, well, just get behind Russia. America's the one that invades all these countries. America's the one that works for the New World Order. Why aren't we for Putin? And I can tell you, my listeners are pissed off at me because I'm like, this is a bad thing. Putin just bit off more than he can chew. And he may be giving them a soft touch right now, but he's going to have to crush and level cities like the U.S. does if you're actually going to take over a group that's opposing you. And then they're going to lure us into a war, and I'm not scared to die, but I don't want to die for bull. So the United States is wrong, NATO's wrong, and Putin's wrong, and the Ukrainians are wrong. And Hollywood and that, all the censored leftists and that stupid Rob Reiner running around always lying about me and saying censor me and promoting war, meathead. That pisses me off because Rob Reiner's made some good movies, but he's an anti-American sack of garbage. Hey, you send your little daughter off to fight in Ukraine. They're taking people. You get your fat ass on an airplane, you go fight the Russians. But you stop calling for no-fly zones and bombing Russian convoys, you piece of garbage. I said, I'm going to, hypothetically, would never hurt Rob Reiner. If I said, I ought to come to your house and break your nose for trying to get us in World War III, I'd probably get arrested. No, but Rob Reiner and all these leftists, they're all over the place. We need war, bomb the Russians, let's have nuclear war. I got all these crazy clips of leftists talking like that. It's like, shut up, stop it, you dumbass. We do not need nuclear war. We do not need a giant war on the continent of Europe. We do not need a draft. We do not need millions of dead people. But if you got a big hard-on for the Russians, brother, you go over there, they'll give you an RPG, and you can go find a Russian tank, okay? Because here's what's happening with the Russians. At first, they didn't want to kill Ukrainians. They were just trying to get military targets. Now that they're getting killed, they're getting pissed. They're starting to go ahead and just slaughter people, and Putin's really got a psychology about him. Maybe he's not stupid. Maybe he wants a big battle of the gods, Guter Damarung. Maybe he wants Flight of the Valkyries. Maybe he wants a war with NATO. I mean, that's where this is going. So for everybody out there that is on the pro-Putin side, okay, see where this gets us. See where this gets us. Let's just see where this gets us. Because we have godlike power, but we're not God. We got all these thousands of nuclear bombs and 500 megaton warheads. 500 megaton warhead detonated at 5,000, 3,000 feet above Dallas, Texas, will level every structure and burn the whole city down and kill a couple million people. Just like that. Look up how big Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were. They were 1/100th of the average warhead. And there are warheads 1,000 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Little boy and fat man. Because believe me, folks, we have this normalcy bias that, we haven't been in a nuclear war, and, we watch Netflix, and, Russia's far away. No, Russia's 20 minutes away with an ICBM attack from Russia. Los Angeles is 1 minute away from a sea-launched cruise missile. All right, let me do this. Let's take another break. I've only covered 2 stories. This is bad, I know. And I'm going to just race through them now, and then I got to start getting to the clips. And you know what? I love my children, and I don't want to die. But I can see justice. I can see God's perspective. I'm not going to say I see what God thinks, but I can get a good idea that if we let hundreds of millions of people starve to death because of the COVID lockdowns and then blame it on Russia, what does it matter if I die with an H-bomb going off over my head or some African starves to death for 3 weeks? and some dumbass leftist policies who knows full well what they've done as part of it, and I've got to be lectured to how I've got to do everything white liberals tell me because they put on blackface politically and claim they represent black people. I mean, seriously. It's disgusting. Hundreds of millions are going to starve to death now. Already over 40 million people, last time we got numbers, starved to death from the IMF, World Bank, UN lockdowns, where they ordered Latin American and African and Asian countries to lock people in their houses, and they starved to death. There ain't no food delivery. All that stuff you see with the UN is PR. The UN runs the killing. But every stupid Miss America and every dumbass model talks about UNICEF and raising money for the UN because they get told to do that or they don't get government and corporate contracts. When you see Hollywood promoting something, you should do the opposite. And I know that's what you've done because that's usually the right thing to do. But when you see Hollywood saying, let's have a nuclear war, we should do the opposite, right? But that doesn't mean go support Putin. And it doesn't mean you're against Russia. It doesn't mean, what we're doing now doesn't really matter unless we understand this. We need Zelensky and we need the Ukrainians to get this. And you're not going to convince them by going, Putin good, Russian good, you bad. But explaining how they're being used by pawns, and this is a larger manipulation, it needs to stop, like the Israeli Prime Minister just said. I got that article highlighted right here. Go read what he said. And it's true, because he doesn't want a nuclear war, which I think is a really good idea. Don't you think that? Because Israel's like the 5th largest nuclear power in the world. So that's where I stand on the Russia situation. And if any other country had done 1/10 of what we've done to the Russians, we would have already attacked them. So, but that doesn't mean I support what Putin did. Just because I understand why they did it does not mean I support it, because you cannot march into a trap. Now, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but we'll be taking calls tomorrow night, 4 to 6 p.m. In fact, I intend to just take calls tomorrow. I'm not going to pontificate tomorrow. 4 to 6 p.m., we'll take a lot of calls. Yeah, they're reportedly shipping in 100,000. Put that back on screen for viewers, please. 100,000 Polish, that's what the Polish government made in case the Russians ever invaded. They made 100,000 after the Cold War of a compact RPG that'll shoot through 2 inches of steel. It's got a big armor-piercing rod in the middle of it. It's a tank killer. And then after it goes through, it explodes. And they shoot a big tree, it just blows it to bits. And it's disposable. And it only weighs 15 pounds. And you can put 2 or 3 of those in a backpack, and one man can take out 3 tanks. High explosive with an armor-piercing rod in it. People say, well, why is it so skinny? It doesn't look like RPGs from Rambo. Those are explosive RPGs that kill people with explosion and shrapnel. That's an armor-piercing anti-tank weapon. So you're in a ditch and 3 tanks are rolling up. One man can take out all 3 tanks. That shoots through the tank and blows up on the inside with a couple pounds of plastic explosive in it. Now, do you think the Russians are going to start bombing everything coming in out of Poland? Yeah. And who do you think is there giving it to them? NATO and the U.S. military. So we're at war with Russia right now. What do you think the Russians are going to do with 100,000 anti-tank missiles being handed out like lollipops? And that's why Russia went in there to begin with, because U.S. Special Forces for at least 5 years have been in the east of Ukraine helping, training those Ukrainian militias to kill the Russian compatriots, Confederates, people that are pro-Russia, who've been there for dozens of generations. I'm gonna stop getting into it. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's a frickin' giant modern war going on right now that is getting bigger and bigger and worse in a giant black hole. I'm gonna take another break. I'm gonna come back, and I said I'm gonna nail it. I got to some important points, but you can see how I get lost in all this because there's just so much. But we'll see if I can get it done when we come back. Stay with us. This is an emergency that's going on here, and people need that knowledge. I know most of you probably have more knowledge than I do on these subjects to understand things, but instead people just like, no, I'm for the Dallas Cowboys or I'm for the Cincinnati Bengals. Or, because it makes it easy. Like, hey, I'm for America and Ukrainians, hey. Or, I'm sick of the West expansion. I'm for Putin. The globalists are winning because they're getting the war they want. The only way to win the game is not to play, to quote the 1983 movie War Games. So let me hit the big points right now. So I've already hit some major ones and set the table for where we are and why this is radically cascading and escalating very, very quickly. And this follows a World War I, World War II model just to a T. I mean, the similarities are just stunning. Because once humans start killing each other, and once you've got evenly matched groups, it escalates. Especially when you're dealing with the types of groups we've got going on here. I mean, this is like a disturbance, family violence disturbance or something. This is an inner Slavic / Germanic war that's been going on for 1,000 years with Germanic and Slavic groups intermarrying and killing each other and slaughtering, and then the Muslims come, so they get together and go kill them, and then they go back to killing each other. So this has been going on for 1,000+ years, and you first have to understand that. And you have to understand that this is a jealousy thing. I mean, Russia sees its hottest chick, its big mama, it's his mama being drug off to be married to George Soros. They went crazy. And I understand that, but that's what wars are. They're crazy. And at the end of the day, it's always about genetic conquest. And Russia sees its genetic mama being taken away from it, and George Soros poking and laughing and snickering on TV. Oh, I'm beating Russia. It's my empire. It's mine now. And it looks to me like the Russians got manipulated into that. But that's why this is so violent, is it's sexual, ladies and gentlemen. And that's the essence of why people want wars, is because that's how the genetics are spread. And that's why, and humans, once the resources run out, this is an instinct we have that we have to conquer, or we're going to destroy ourselves. And by the way, if you're a new listener, or the Young Turks make a joke about what I just said, in real war psychology level, highest level PhD stuff, they all teach this, okay? The general public doesn't know this stuff, but this is really how it all works. So this is like a jealous son, not one watching his mother drug off and gang raped, basically. But the gang raping of Ukraine by the globalists was, again, to get Russia to come into the arena, and Russia took the bait. So it doesn't matter if emotionally you can side with Russia and see why Russia did it. It's not good. Then you ask, well, then what happens? Well, the globalists wanted a war there because they can't fix things politically. We're winning politically. Populist movements from Russia to the United States to Brazil are coming together, and we know what's going on. And that scares the hell out of the globalists. So let's talk about it. Here's the bad news. And there's 1,000 facets to this, and my frustration point is I don't want to make it too complex because it just goes on too long, but also don't want to dumb it down. But I think you all know what I'm about to say because you're smart as I am, or smarter. This is a propaganda war. We've already seen extreme lies out of the Ukrainian puppets and the rest of it that are just over-the-top ridiculous. And the censorship that comes with that to keep people from learning about it because they want to expand the war. The globalists do. And so you've already heard, oh, the Russians attacked a nuclear reactor. Oh, they attacked another one, but then that was all lies. And then, oh, they killed everybody at the Snake Island, and oh, the ghost of Kiev and all this other stuff. None of it was real. And then you see now the pre-programming all over the news, and Biden saying it's a red line. If they use chemical weapons, we're going to have to basically get involved. And what's even scarier is Biden and others are having to say, but that doesn't mean our boots on the ground, because they know a bunch of commanders and a bunch of other people are ready to go in. And all it's going to take is one mistake, and this thing could turn into a nuclear war. You know what happened yesterday, right? India shot a ballistic missile, an intermediate range missile, by accident, because they were practicing with their satellites and stuff. You know, they got satellites too, targeting Pakistani military bases. And then they fired one, because they got so many of them. I mean, like most analysts that I respect, in fact, most analysts, period, that are real analysts, believe World War III would start in one place or one other place, two places. But the first one is Pakistan and India. That's the number one kickoff for nuclear war. Number two is Ukraine and all the war games. And number three is the South China Sea and China. And now Pakistan and India are voting together to not sanction Russia because they're tired of the imperialism, as they call it. And they're not communists, but they're saying, like, we're sick of you telling us what to do. We're mortal enemies, but did the UN come in and say India was wrong when they annexed Kashmir 2 years ago? The answer is no. And India sure as hell isn't going to sit there. They get what Russia's doing. Kashmir's always been part of India, got taken away by Muslims. They're taking it back. The Indians are like, that makes sense. Russia voted for us when we took Kashmir. And I'm not on a side. I know Muslims have been there for hundreds of years too. But they were pushing the Hindus around, so the Hindus got tired of it. And see, that's the argument. And that's probably why Putin did this. He said, hey, look at Kashmir. Look at Modi. He went there in a couple weeks, kicked the Muslims out. They didn't kick them out, but kicked their government out. So see, I could keep geopolitically going on for hours about all this, but let me just go over these headlines here. But here's the big takeaway. Here's the big pre-programming I see, and here's what I'm really worried about. Because, again, the globalists talk to us like we have IQs below room temperature. So the pre-programming is completely clear. They've telegraphed what they're going to do, and you know what it is. They already said the Russians attacked nuclear plants. It wasn't real. They already did a bunch of other lies. Well, now they're saying the Russians, they're getting intelligence that the Russians are going to launch a chemical attack. And they're getting intelligence they're going to launch a radiological attack. And they're getting intelligence they're going to launch a biological attack. And just unpacking those three things, we could talk for 2 hours. I'm sure you've got your own points, but think about it. What is in Ukraine right now? A bunch of old fissile material from nuclear weapons that got rat-holed and didn't get handed to the Russians at the fall of the Soviet Union, and then afterwards, 20 years ago. And there's all those bioweapon labs the Russians had built that got taken over by Ukraine and then by the United States and NATO that they don't want us talking about. And they're now saying the Russians are going to capture those and release bioweapons. Why would you do that? Unless you're the IMF World Bank that want to implode the world economy and bring in a surveillance system. The Russians didn't want that. No, that helps the Chinese and the globalists, not the Russians. So there's just a few of the data points. Here's why you got to be concerned. They are pre-programming everyone that it's imminent that there's going to be a giant chemical, biological, radiological, or even nuclear event from the Russians. And then it won't matter because the Russian media is all being cut off. All the TV channels, all the internet channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, state-run media, private Russian media, media that just covers what Russians are saying. They want us taken off just because we just show you what they're saying. And that's what you're supposed to do. Like, hey, they're saying this, they're saying that. You know, in World War II, they played Hitler's speeches on the radio. And they had newsreels saying, look what this son of a bitch is saying. Hear the whole thing. Because we were a free country compared to them. You couldn't hear American broadcasts in Germany. They would execute you if they caught you. See? But they're like, oh, anybody that shows, in fact, if you even show a Putin speech, you should be taken offline. Wow. And Oliver Stone's movies are being taken down because he predicted all this. And Trump's latest interview where he says, I threatened to nuke Russia and Putin's wrong. They don't want you knowing Trump said that. They're saying Trump's pro-Putin. So they took that down and it had 5 million views on the Full Send podcast, who are awesome guys. So that's the stuff bouncing around in my head. And I mean, I'll tell you, I'm beyond pissed off. I mean, I'm just sick at my stomach of leftists and how they're pro-censorship, pro-war, pro-evil, pro-idiocy. They're corporate whores that run around and say because they got rainbow flags on their house, as if I care what they're doing in their bedroom, that I'm supposed to bow down to their warmongering and their censoring and their sexualization of children. And I'm just done. I'm done. You know, there was a great philosopher, some say the greatest, Aristotle. He said, tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society. And, you know, he's right. I was more of a liberal when I was younger, and I am more of a real classic stoic conservative now, because you know why? I'm tolerant of people. I mean, do whatever you want to yourself, except this. What you learn is when you're tolerant of these weak, sick, crazy people, these pedophiles, I don't mean I'm tolerant of that, but you know what I mean? When you're tolerant of the whole leftist culture, they come and they're not tolerant of you. You understand? You tolerate their garbage, their weakness, their laziness, their stupidness, their temper tantrums, all of it, and then you wake up in a gulag working for them. You wake up their slave. So no, I will not be tolerant of you. Stay away from my children. I will not be tolerant of anything you do. I will stop projecting my goodness onto you while you lecture me how you're high and mighty and how you're smart when you're a lazy dumbass. Man, I saw a Young Turks clip today. I rarely watch what they have to say about us, but I was driving in the car, so I listened to it. Driving to work today. And he's like, the head turd, the head Young Turd's up there, Sink Uger, Chunky, whatever his name is. I can't pronounce his name. The point is the guy that runs the organization that has a fascist, anti-Christian name, the Young Turks that killed over 1.5 million Armenians, a Islamic militia that killed 1.5 million Christians. That's what he's named after. He thinks we're too dumb to see it. He goes, well, what's wrong with gay frogs? Why shouldn't we have them? Who cares if the frogs are gay? And then he talks about, because we're intellectual. He actually says, we're intellectual, we're smart, we know science. Now, unpack what's wrong with gay frogs. Why? Because he goes, okay, the frogs are turning gay. So I'm right about that. It's good. No, there'll be fossils. It'll be the only frogs of species where they all start having sex with the other males, because males don't have babies together. And the atrazine does similar things like lower sperm counts, makes smaller genitals in utero. And you can take carp, we've got some in the lake my dad's got, and when they're eggs, you can put a few drops of a chemical in that's similar to atrazine, and all of the males don't develop and just become females. Just their male genetics don't develop when they're basically a little larva. Couple drops. It's the same thing with us. It just does it in the brain. And by the way, people say, oh, it's some of the Christian groups that aren't really, I'm not saying they're not Christian, but that they think they know all the science, whatever, they don't actually research it. They go, oh, being gay is not natural. Why? People aren't just born like that. Yeah, they are. When you put chemicals in there, when the brain development becomes more female and the genitals shrivel up, and now more and more boys are being born with both, it's called being a mutant. And yeah, they're born that way. And so I don't hate a man who's got, basically is asexual. Because humans are more complex than a fish. But the way it works is it basically makes the brain develop more female, the genitals, all of it, the entire genetic traits. The bones are smaller, blood volume smaller, muscles are smaller. They're girls, folks. And then when that whole process is happening with the chemicals, we're like, well, all these little boys are all like girls now. Let's make them girls, see? And finish the sterilization process. Because even though their sperm count's lower by 98%, they might still become a man and get a girl pregnant. So let's chop that sucker off. And that's a huge program. They got programs to sterilize fire ants by making the fire ants gay. The male fire ants stop getting her pregnant. The queen. Just nobody wants to have sex with the queen anymore. And Sink's like, why don't you want to make the fire ants gay? That's kind of cool. Why, look, a little rainbow flag on them. It's science. They're attacking us. So what's wrong with gay frogs, Sink? Whatever the hell your name is. Young Turks, young murderers, young Islamic anti-Christian militia. It'd be like naming yourself the Nazis. But it's cute because Americans don't know history, but he does, and it's a fun liberal communist joke. So Sink, what is wrong with the frogs being gay? It's Jeopardy. Extinction? Extinction. 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 That's what's wrong with the frogs being gay. Do I look at two male frogs humping each other in the drainage ditch and go, gosh, I hate those gay people? No, I go scientifically. Oh, look, the male frog of that species is about a third the size of the female. Look, those frogs are the same size. Those are two males. See, Sink would think that's really weird to actually know some science. But no, I routinely, to be out of the golf course. I don't play golf, but I live by one. And I'll be out walking the spring, and you'll even look in there, and you'll just see two frogs, same size, humping each other. They're two males.